Hi everyone, this is Sally Fowler with Disable Advantage. Thank you for joining me on my Patreon tier, Service Dog Questions Answered. Today's question is, how do you keep training consistent while being in pain? And I want you guys to know straight up that this answer is going to be applicable to living with chronic illness in general, not specific to training while you're in pain. A lot of it does come from my own experiences of learning how to be consistent while living with severe pain, but a lot of it can be applied to training consistently with brain fog, training consistently with muscle weakness, and other things that we encounter when we live with a chronic condition. The second thing I want you guys to know is that this answer can be applied to training your own service dog, and it can be applied to training a companion pet dog. Because what we're talking about in this particular answer is training and the communication between you and your dog, and that being the thing that stays consistent, not so much a specific service dog skill. Consistency is crucial for any dog owner relationship, whether it's a pet dog or a working dog. How do I keep consistent while being in pain? The first thing I want to share with you guys is that, well, the first thing I want to share with you guys is something that's going to make most dog trainers uncomfortable. And that is that it's going to be pretty impossible for you to be 100% consistent with your dog while you're training a dog and you have a chronic condition. Dog trainers thrive on consistency. It's like our favorite word. And it is extremely important for effective communication with your dog. But I can also tell you from personal experience of training my own dogs and teaching other people with chronic conditions how to train their dogs, that you can get by as long as you strive for like somewhere between 90 to 95% consistency with your dog. Any lower than that, and you do start to see a lot of problems shine through. But here's the thing. Most dogs are incredibly smart, and it may be that you have a dog who isn't a good match for you as a pet dog or as a service dog candidate, and that could be part of why having a lower percentage of consistency from you is failing harder. And that gets a little confusing, but I'll try and explain it better in a sec. Dogs are really smart. So if you have a dog who is a good fit for you as a pet dog or as a potential service dog candidate, they're going to learn to fill in the gaps. And that is really, really helpful. The more that dog works with you and figures out what's going on and figures out that you're a little bit different, and not in a bad way, just that you're a little bit different from, the other people who live in your house or other people that this dog works with, they're going to learn how to listen to you even when you're not 100% consistent in how you're holding the leash or 100% consistent in how you're asking them to do something. But if you have a dog who is not a good match for you, a perfect example is if you have a husky, for instance, and it's really, really hard for you to learn how to consistently rise to whatever challenge that husky presents with you, you're going to have a harder time training your dog. And it might be that that dog is not a good fit for you as a pet or as a potential service dog candidate. And so it may be that you have to consider rehoming your dog and finding a dog who is going to be a better fit for you. And I know that's a really difficult decision to make. And I know it sounds like a terrible thing of me to say, but when we live with a chronic illness, I want you to set high standards for yourself, and I want you to try to reach them, but I also don't want you to try and hold yourself to the same standards that everybody else who isn't living with a chronic illness abides by. Okay. And so, like, that applies to everything in our life. That applies to, a person without a chronic illness can probably spend an entire day out with their friends, but you and I can only spend a few hours out, maybe 1 hour out, or maybe we do best hanging out at our home. And so we're still interacting with people. We're still holding ourselves to a ideal that we've created for ourselves, but it's an achievable ideal. We don't try and force ourselves into bad situations because we know we're not going to be able to meet the demand of it. Hopefully, most of the time. And unfortunately, a lot of us have ended up with dogs who are not good fits for us and our chronic condition. They're going to make your chronic condition worse. It's going to be, their good behavior is going to be much more contingent on your ability to be consistent 100% of the time, or even higher than what you're able to reliably do. And you're going to consistently run into problems communicating with your dog. And in those situations, I would recommend rehoming your dog and finding a dog that's a little bit better matched to you. And if that's something that you run into, please set up a coaching session with me so I can help you work through the feelings on that one and also work through discovering what might be a better dog fit for you if you still want to try and have a companion dog or if you still want to try and train your own service dog. So that was kind of a complicated first part answer. You may need to listen to this answer several times. I'm going to try and summarize again. The first part of this is that you need to accept and try and convince, if you're working with another dog trainer who is not me, you need to accept that you're not going to be able to be 100% consistent all the time. You're not going to be able to be 98% consistent all the time. You're probably going to aim for between 90 to 95% consistent all the time. And here's a fun thing. Your consistency ability is going to change depending on good condition days and bad condition days. It will drop on bad condition days. It will be better on good condition days. This is something that working with a chronic illness dog trainer, like myself, will give you a better advantage because I'm going to understand stuff like that. The second part is that you need to learn how to be consistent. It is absolutely possible to be some measure of consistent when training in pain, but you have to learn it. And it is a skill that takes time to learn, and it is a skill that is best learned with help. But I will get to the help part in a second because that's point 3 and I don't want to confuse you guys. Okay, so point 2 is that you need to learn how to be consistent. So I want you guys to think back to when you were first learning how to navigate life with your chronic illness and you made a ton of mistakes. And I can say that because I made a ton of mistakes. One of the biggest things that stands out to me is that I didn't used to think before I did stuff. And so I dropped a lot of things. I dropped glasses and then had to clean up broken glass very carefully. I dropped cups and spilled my water, my juice everywhere. There were quite a few times where I was trying to pour hot coffee, and yes, I did spill hot coffee on myself. And luckily it wasn't super, super hot, and so I didn't get bad burns from it. But these were all times where I was first navigating my disability. These were also times where I didn't actually know what was wrong with me yet. I just knew something was wrong, and that really fun point in your life where nobody believes anything's wrong with you, but you definitely know something's wrong. And I made so many mistakes. But it wasn't so much that I was making mistakes as it was I was learning how to deal with my condition. I was learning how to manage it. And over time, the more I got familiar with my condition and the more I learned what my body was doing, and I became more self-aware of my condition, where a pain flare was happening, if I had spasms, what level of pain I was in, things like that. I got better at managing my condition. And one of the ways I got better at managing my condition was I got better at thinking before I did stuff. And I can remember like looking at a cup. So, you know, those movies where somebody is developing telekinesis, the power to move things, and they're staring at a pencil or they're staring at a cup really, really hard, willing it to move. Okay, so I imagine that's probably what my face looked like, because I used to sit and I would stare at my cup and then I would slowly reach my hand out and I would focus really, really hard on the shape of my arm and how I was moving my arm through the air and the shape of my hand and where I would put my hand on my mug. And I started with an empty mug because that's safer than a mug with hot things in it. But I had to learn that by dropping a lot of hot things on myself. So focusing on the shape of my hand and focusing on where I would put it on the mug. And then I would try lifting it experimentally and putting it back down. I would only lift it off the table by like, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, not very far. But I would experiment with how to lift the mug and what was the best hand position for lifting the mug. Was it holding it near the rim? Was it trying to grip it with my whole hand? Was it holding the handle? Which for me, more often than not, no, the handle is bad. And then I added liquid to it. Again, not hot. And tried, well, how does this change? Where's the pain? Where's the numbness? Where's the tingling? Where's the point of weakness? How full of something can I pick up before my hand starts to shake? Or what shape of mug is best for me to hold and hold securely without dropping it? And also then how do I hold the mug, maintain this grip, and walk across the room to put it on another surface? And these are all things that I started to think about more intensely with everything. How I hold my pants, how I get dressed, how I get out of the shower, how I towel myself off, how I wash myself in the shower, how I get off the toilet, how I go down steps or up steps, how I get in and out of our car, how I get things out of the fridge. And every tiny little action that you go through in your life, I started thinking about more closely. And I developed a better sense of self-awareness for where my body was in the world and how it was being used. And the irony is that part of CRPS and a lot of our chronic conditions is that we lose, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but we lose something called proprioception, which is when it's our body's map, basically. Healthy people are able to, they have a map in their brain of where all their body parts are. So their brain always knows where the left hand is, where the right hand is. And even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, wait, where is my left hand? I don't know. It's holding the mic, but I'm not entirely sure where it is because CRPS messes with my ability to do proprioception. But when I started this podcast, I thought very intently about how to hold the mic, and my hand's just going to stay like that until I finish this podcast. Anyways, the point is, when you start navigating life with chronic illness, whether it be CRPS or fibromyalgia or being in remission from cancer, but still dealing with the effect that cancer had on your life, if you're going through you're going to be going through changes, and the way you did things before isn't going to work for how you do things now. And so you have to develop all of these new ways of approaching your world to manage your pain best. And for me, that was becoming more self-aware, thinking about how I did things to try and minimize accidents, to try and minimize pain. And that is a form of learning consistency. Now, I don't have to think about how to pick up a coffee mug unless it's a new type of mug that I've never held before, or unless I'm having a particularly high pain day or a weak day, or weak as in like muscle weak, shakiness, tremors, etc., not like Tuesday. The reason is the more I thought about it, the more I was intentional in how I did things in my life, it became habit. And so how you learn to be consistent when training your dog is you spend a lot of time learning how to be consistent and being really intentional with every little thing you do with your dog. How you're holding the leash, how you're holding how you put down their bowl, how you're putting their gear on, how you're standing next to them, and things like that. And the more you do it, the more it becomes habit. Routine is also a really big part of being consistent when you train your dog while living with no condition or while living with a chronic condition. So trying to keep your dog to the same routine will help you develop consistency as well. So things like feeding at the same time, exercising at the same time, playtime at the same time, potty breaks at the same time. And developing a routine for your dog will teach you how to be consistent with maintaining that routine. And you actually end up, healthy people develop one routine. I encourage people to develop 2 routines. One routine for your average day and one routine for your really, really bad days, so that you always have a routine and a pattern for you to fall back on to help maintain consistency, even on the days when you're not operating at your best because of your condition flaring up. 90 to 95% of the time, you're not going to need to think about being consistent with your dog. You're just going to do it because you learned how to do it and it's become habit. But on the days when you're having a worse pain day or a worse brain fog day, or your condition is having a really, really bad week, your consistency will drop and you're not going to be as effective with communicating with your dog. And you have to accept that. It's unfortunate, but it is part of the reality of living with and working with a dog while you have a chronic condition. And it's something that I want you to try to cut yourself a break on. There will be dog trainers who do not understand this. So if you're working with a dog trainer, who is not me, or you find another dog trainer who is familiar with chronic illness, awesome. But if you're working with a dog trainer who's not familiar with chronic illness, they are not going to understand this and they're going to be extremely hard on you. And I can say that because I see and I hear how dog trainers talk to the general public. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I will say it does not take people like us into account. Most of the conversations dog trainers have with people do not take our limitations into account. Most of the programs they offer do not take us into account. So you need to understand that when you're looking for a dog trainer to help you, or if you're following a dog trainer on social media and learning from them, I want you to listen to their content, but then I also want you to remind yourself that you're different and that what they're saying may not be the letter of the law for your experience working with your dog. It is possible to learn how to be consistent with your condition, but it is a learned skill. So a lot of people think that dog training is about training the dog, and it is about training the dog, but it's also about training you. Really good dog trainers are going to take the time to teach your dog things, and they're going to take the equal amount of time that they spend on the dog, or at least half that, to devote to making sure that you understand and that you have learned as well. Really good dog trainers are not just going to fix your dog and hand it back to you and walk away. They're going to fix your dog, hand it to you, and then show you what they did and teach you what they did, and be sure that you understand how to duplicate what they did at home on your own. Just because we understand that there's not going to be a dog trainer following you around for the rest of your life, telling you what to do. And good dog trainers are going to make sure that you know and feel capable taking care of whatever arises with your dog after you've finished working with this particular trainer. Now I'm on to point 3. Point 3 is that if you have a chronic illness, I strongly encourage you to work with a dog trainer. I want everybody to work with a dog trainer because people don't realize that dog trainers are here for more than just fixing problems. Most dog trainers would love to help prevent those problems from ever starting for you and your dog. But if you have a chronic illness, I especially want you to work with a dog trainer, because a dog trainer is going to be the person who helps you learn how to be consistent. And they're going to do that in a few different ways. Doesn't matter what kind of trainer you go to. A good dog trainer is going to hold you accountable. They're going to set standards and goals for you to meet. They're going to keep you to a timeline, and they're going to critique you and encourage you and point out mistakes that you make so that you can get better. Why is this important? Well, one of the hardest things for someone to learn is how to pay attention to what you're doing and what the dog is doing at the same time. And that is not made easier when our brain can't remember where our left hand is. I cannot speak to what other dog trainers are doing, so I'm going to speak to what I do with my clients. A simple exercise that I teach my clients is how to teach your dog to go into a sit. There are no words involved. I want to focus on the dog learning the action of moving into a sit and from a standing position, and what sit feels like while they're in it, before we ever add words to it. So for the dog, what I'm looking at is I'm watching on a live screen. So I'm watching my client work with their dog, and I watch how well the dog goes into the position based on feeling pressure on their butt and feeling the leash pull up on their training collar. So their head goes up and their butt goes down and they're in a sit. So I'm looking at the dog, but I'm also looking at the person. I'm looking at how they're standing. So what side of the dog they're on, how they're holding the leash, what hand is pushing the butt down, what hand is holding the leash. I'm looking at if they're bent over or if they're standing more upright. I'm looking at if they're beside the dog or head on to the dog. I'm looking at the dog's body language in relation to the handler. I'm looking at the handler's body language, how nervous they are, how confident they are, if they are being really forceful in their hand cues with the butt pressure and the leash pressure, or how gentle or timid they're being with those cues. And I ask them to do it about 3 to 5 times. It depends on how much energy my client has in that particular session. If my client is really wearing thin, we might only do a few reps. If my client's going strong, it's a good day, we do maybe 10 reps of something. But I also read the dog. Is the dog getting bored? Is the dog getting frustrated? Is the dog getting tired? Or does the dog want to keep learning and keep doing stuff? And so I'm looking at all of these variables at once and remembering it. I'm also writing it down. Um, and I notice patterns. So if somebody keeps changing their hand shape for how they're holding the leash, or if someone keeps changing, they start on the side of the dog and then they move to being in front of the dog, they think they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. But from my outside perspective, watching this happen, I can tell them, actually, this is what you did. And this is what changed. And this is what changed for your dog when you changed this one thing that you weren't aware of. When I work with a client, by being an outside perspective, I'm able to see the whole picture of what's going on with the dog and what's going on with the owner and what's going on with how the owner is using their body and using their using spatial pressure with the dog and using their body language with the dog and using the level of intention, what their arms are doing, what their hands are doing, what their feet are doing, what their eyes are doing, what the dog's eyes are doing, what the dog's ears are doing. Every tiny little detail, I'm going to be watching for it. And in this, I can help you learn to be more consistent. And I get tedious at times. I get annoying at times. I'm going to admit that freely. I know it because I can hear myself, and I know I would find myself grating at times. But I'm doing it to help you, and it will make you a better communicator with your dog, and it will teach you how to be consistent with your dog. But I'm going to say things like, now hold on, stop. How are you holding your leash? Take a moment, focus. What side of the dog are you on? Are you in front of your dog or are you beside your dog? And I'm going to ask you questions to help teach you to be self-aware when you're working with your dog. And I want you to feel more confident. I want you to feel more at ease knowing that healthy people struggle with this too. So it is not an isolated thing to chronic illness people that we have to learn how to be self-aware with our dogs. Everybody has to learn how to be self-aware with their dogs. But it is definitely harder for us because of our chronic illness, because we're going along and we've learned how to be consistent, and then we suddenly get hit with a bolt of pain. And what do we do in that moment? How do we stay consistent in that moment? Those are challenges that healthy people aren't necessarily facing. But when you work with a dog trainer, it's somebody who can see the things that you're not aware of and help you work to change them so that they become habit for you. When I teach people loose leash walking, one of the first things I focus on, even before we put the leash on the dog, is how you hold the leash. So I spend a lot of time talking about leash safety, the right type of leash to use, types of leashes to avoid, flexi leashes, and what type of collar to use, what type of collar is best for you and for your dog, and what you're trying to accomplish, and how you hold the leash when you get ready to put it on, how you put on gear, and how you hold the leash on a walk. And one thing that I can remember saying to one of my clients recently was, put your arm down, put your arm down, put your arm down. And I said it probably 10 times in a session. Put your arm down. And she would kind of smile and laugh a little bit and immediately do it. But when you're learning to walk your dog with a chronic illness, you're having to focus on a lot of stuff at once. Okay, you're having to focus on, depending on what your symptoms are. When I was learning to walk my dog, I had to look at the ground a lot because I had to see what the ground was and where to step so that I didn't fall down. So I had to focus on where the ground was, what my feet were doing, left leg, right leg, walking in a straight line, what my dog was doing, and what my dog was doing for when I needed to issue corrections, which are a way to alert the dog that they're making a mistake or doing something that you don't want them to be doing, and then following up with the right type of praise, and then also how to hold my body and how to hold the leash while I was walking so I didn't accidentally tell the dog something I wasn't intending to tell them. And that's a ton of things to learn. So having a dog trainer work with me, see stuff on the outside, and when we didn't have sessions with him, my husband and I took turns doing this for each other. So when we did our homework together, I watched him and he watched me, and we would point out to each other, hey, your arm's really tense, loosen your arm, relax, take a breath. And the put your arm down thing is, if your arm's up in the air, one, you're going to get tired faster. And two, if the dog does something unexpected, you have no strength. Your strength comes from your core and your hips. So keeping your arm by your side is a much stronger way to hold the leash than with your arm out to the side or way up in the air, or for some reason up by your face and chest. I don't know. I can remember doing it as a kid, but I don't remember the logic behind it. So one of the things I say is put your arm down and relax, take a breath, loosen your shoulders. Any tension that you have in your body can go into your dog through the leash, and people don't know that. And so it's part of my job to sit back and see these things and tell you so that you can change it in the moment. And these are things that you can learn without a dog trainer helping you. But your training might progress slower. You might encounter more problems. Your dog will more than likely develop problems that you have no idea how they got there, and they got there from lack of consistency in some area. And when you have a dog trainer help you, we're not going to prevent all the problems. We're not magical, unfortunately. That would be so awesome. But we can help prevent a lot of problems that come from a lot of these stumbling blocks of trying to figure this out with no help. Not many dog trainers are posting complete videos for free. Most dog trainers are posting complete videos through a classroom program that you sign up for, or through their Patreon page that you sign up for. And the reason for that is because dog trainers, we are trying to make money. We do want to help people, but we are trying to make money. And it took a lot of time to video record it and add voiceover. And I am so sorry. The longer I talk, the CRPS makes my throat hurt, and it makes it catch, and no amount of drinking water helps. I can tell you that if you're trying to learn from videos that are like 30 seconds long, you're missing a lot of information that's going to help you learn how to be consistent. The best way to learn how to be consistent is to have someone help you learn how to be consistent, and that's working with a dog trainer. How do you be consistent in a flare? So let's say you've learned how to be consistent. You're great at it. Or you're in the process of learning to be consistent, but you know to look at what your hands are doing, what your feet are doing, what your legs are doing, and all that stuff. But you're training your dog and you have a really bad pain day. It is going to be harder for you to be consistent. And you will make mistakes. I can tell you that from my personal experience and from watching it in other people, the first year of training your dog, whether it's a pet dog or a service dog, with something like CRPS is going to be the worst. Your dog is going to cause flares. Definitely. And they're not going to do it intentionally. They're going to do it because they're learning and your learning is going to collide at times, and not in great ways for you, which will drive up your pain level, your fatigue level, your muscle weakness, your tremors, and yeah, your brain fog. You're going to have moments where you lose patience with your dog. You're going to have moments where you lose patience with yourself. You're going to have moments where if you're working with a dog trainer, you're going to lose patience with them. So if they're not aware of this problem or this likelihood up front, go ahead and tell them so that they know not to hold it against you later. If you get frustrated with me, I'm not going to hold it against you because I get it. I've been there. But yeah, being consistent in the middle of a flare is much, much harder than being consistent on a daily basis. And the only real advice I have for you is you learn in your own way in those moments how to be the best that you can be. When I was first training Robbie and I was learning how to be consistent while training, there were times where I got severe flare-ups in the middle of training, and I couldn't be consistent, or I lost patience with him, and I'm not proud of it. I felt guilty about it, and I would beat myself up about it, but I also would replay it in my head. And this is both a good thing to do and a bad thing. So what I want you to do is replay it in your head once or twice, take notes, and then try to forgive yourself and move on with your day. Because if you dwell there, you're really going to have a hard time pulling yourself out. But I would try and look back on what I did and how I did it, and then do better the next time. And that's a hard thing to learn how to do, but it is entirely possible, and it is absolutely necessary for training your own dog while living with chronic illness, whether it's a service dog or a pet dog. If you're not good at remembering what you did 30 seconds ago, which is a problem that all of us have at some point, videotape your training sessions. That is a wonderful way to be able to look back and watch yourself and pause and see what your body's doing and learn from mistakes that you made and mistakes that your dog made, and try to do better the next time. Overall, what I've learned is that you can be consistent, but it has to become a habit. It has to become, first of all, it has to be something that you're willing to learn. And this is where I'm walking a fine line here, because on the one hand, it's easier and safer for someone else to train your dog for you. But I advocate for people with chronic illness, if they're able, to actually train their own dog with the help and the guidance of a dog trainer, showing them what to do, teaching them how to do, and then holding them to it. And the reason for that is that you need time to learn how to be consistent. You need somebody helping you, giving you feedback, but you need time to learn those habits and learn how to make them muscle memory. Your dog needs to learn that you're not going to be 100% consistent all the time. A dog trainer is going to be way more better at this. That was bad grammar. I apologize. A dog trainer is going to be better at this than you are. Okay, so your dog is going to go and learn from somebody who essentially does have magic powers, sort of, in comparison to the level of consistency that you're able to bring to the table, and your dog might struggle more. They learned from someone who was healthy. They learned from someone who didn't have sudden pain flare-ups. They learned from someone who was fine 1 second and then didn't fall over the next second. I hope that made sense. Your dog needs to learn about you. Your dog needs to learn about your chronic condition. Whether they are a service dog or a pet dog, they need to learn about you. You guys need to learn together how to be consistent, how to communicate with each other. It is great. It's great to have somebody else do the work for you. It is fabulous. I can agree to that. But you miss out on the opportunity for you to learn how to be consistent with your dog, how to hold yourself accountable, how to be self-aware of yourself with your dog and your chronic condition. Because when you train a dog and you have a chronic condition, there's 3 parties here. There's you, your condition, and your dog. And all 3 of you have got to figure out how to work well together. And that doesn't happen very easily if somebody else takes the dog out of the equation. It's easier and it's safer, but you're gonna miss important lessons. And you're never gonna be perfect at it. I'm still not perfect at consistency, and I've been doing this for close to 10 years now. I did learn consistency riding horses. So there's that. But all of us have already learned consistency somewhere in our life. We've learned how to pick up a cup, how to get dressed. We've learned how to drive a car. We've learned how to go to school, how to take classes, how to take notes we can read and understand later. And all of those are instances of consistency. So if you've been able to learn that, you can absolutely learn how to be consistent when you train your dog. But you have to be open to learning how to be consistent for training your dog. Once you learn how to be consistent for training your dog, it becomes muscle memory. You don't have to think about it as hard. Your dog learns about your illness, and your dog's going to fill in the gaps when you don't do something just right, because your dog is so well trained to work with you and communicate with you and understand your signals that on the days where you fall behind, they've probably got it covered. And for the moments when you're in severe pain, your dog's training will shine through. That first year is going to be rough. The first year, it's a lot of kind of stumbling around in the dark, figuring stuff out. And I don't want to discourage you, but I do want to be honest with you. It's not pretty. But it does pay off. I can assure you of that. It does pay off. Taking the time to commit to you and your dog working together as a team is what helps your training be consistent, even while living with a chronic condition. If you would like to sign up for a coaching session or learn about training a service dog and sign up for a free consult, please send me an email or a message through Patreon. Thank you for listening to this long-winded answer and hearing a CRPS throat flare happen at the same time. Thank you for bearing with me through that. I hope you've learned something. If you have any questions, please leave a comment or send me a message privately. Thank you.